Lofts it for Smith. It's a touchdown. Devontae Smith.
Bijan Robinson. Give him the ball. Touchdown, Texas. He's got room. Lamar Jackson. Open field. Inside the 20. He is in. Lamar. Spectacular.
What's going on, guys? Welcome into the Saturday Air Raid, the very first edition, and I'm very excited to talk some NFL with my two co-hosts today. We've got Brad Bolt, we've got Dan O'Connell here, the beard. Very excited to have you here and talk some NFL in the off-season. How is it, guys?
Going good, mate. How are you?
Still doing well. Dan?
Mate, I'm so excited for this. It's been a long time coming now, and we're finally getting it going, finally getting to sit down and have a chat and have some fun.
When was the last time you had a chance to talk this kind of NFL in this kind of context?
The NFL draft with you boys, obviously.
Yes, of course.
Before that, it would have been a couple of guest spots on pods last year. So that would have been last time. So, yeah, it's too long between drinks.
And Brad, I know that your last encounters, like not the same sort of esteemed level as Dan and I, but pretty well known in the podcasting community, perhaps.
A couple of names. I'm not sure if anyone's heard of Field Yates or Danny Heifetz. They were the last two guests, but peeking behind the curtain on that I feel I require them to say night. And the cast with Field Yates was about 10 o'clock my time, and then the one with Danny Heifetz ended up being at 2 a.m. on Good Friday.
You do what you have to do.
Yeah, and I was on with both of them at different times, recorded them, and then went to myself, right, I'm going to get an hour and a half, 2 hours sleep in between podcasts, and then couldn't actually sleep, so I ended up sitting up the entire time. So,
just like during the season.
Pretty much, yeah.
All right.
Pretty much.
So this is the Saturday Air Raid. So the idea of this show, I wanted to introduce a format that sort of bridges the gap between college football show and an NFL show. So I kind of want to specifically focus on college players who are like juniors and seniors who are making their move or next steps to go into the NFL, and then players on the rookie contracts in the NFL. And I've sort of been umming and ahhing about what that kind of means, because it gets kind of confusing, right? Because you look at Jalen Hurts, well, he's just signed a new contract. He's not on his rookie deal anymore. However, in that same draft year, Joe Burrow, Justin Herbert, Tua, they've not signed their new contracts yet because they're all part of the fifth-year option. So it gets kind of murky, but I just decided to go with it. There's no pressure. If we talk about Tyreek Hill and Devontae Adams, we talk about them. That's absolutely fine. It's going to happen. But I wanted to create this show to mainly focus on Dynasty fantasy leagues and talk a bit of real NFL football as well, but also help teams that are sort of in that non-compete sort of year that they're trying to rebuild. I know from personal experience in my Dynasty league that I commish, there's a number of teams who just year in and year out, they sit in that sort of bottom 6 to 8 teams in the league, and they never really make that next step. And I think it's more sort of about self-awareness more than anything else. So hopefully this show will help people with that and get you thinking a few years ahead. How does that sound?
Sounds like a bloody good idea to me.
I like it. I like the idea of helping the other people with their league, because a lot of whether you're a casual player or you're a diehard fantasy football player, just taking a peek behind the curtain and using some of these extra stats, extra just little tidbits of information week to week sort of thing can give you that advantage, to give you that drop on, whether it be a waiver pickup, a trade, or things like that. So I like that idea that we can try and help people moving forward and give them some of the young up and coming people that they they might be not as well known at the moment, but a couple weeks time, couple months into the season, you'll be so glad that you've pulled them from the waivers or pulled them from another team, and you are sitting pretty a la Justin Jefferson in his rookie season.
And I think a lot of the times you can sit there, and when it's not your team, you can take a step back and look at things completely differently. And you can see something on someone else's team that you won't be able to see in your team. And
That's
so
it.
you can give people the advice without overthinking it, overanalyzing it like you do. Like I know I do it for my teams. I'll overanalyze way too much a lot of the time. But if I'm giving other people advice, it's straight off the bat. I know what I want to do or want to tell them. And it's a whole lot easier for me telling other people what I think of their team and how I think they should go about it.
100%. I was thinking about it today. Like, think about teams in the AFC. If those teams want to make the Super Bowl and compete in the Super Bowl, they've basically got to go through Kansas City to do that and go through those sort of top tier teams. So they need to have the self-awareness enough to say, we're in a position where we can do that. And I often feel like dynasty leagues are the same, but people don't really think about it this way, or at least some people that I play with, where they don't sort of think about it in terms of like, if I want to make the championships or if I want to be one of these great teams, I've got to go through these top tier teams who are year in and year out up the top there. A lot of the time they might play the first sort of 3 or 4 weeks, and then they go, you know what? I'm off to a bad start. I don't see this happening. This probably isn't my year. I'm going to drop off. But because they're not a tanking or a rebuilding team, they're already in this sort of middle tier kind of, I call it the Atlanta Falcons realm of just never bad enough to have that top pick and never good enough to make the playoffs or go deep into the playoffs, I should say. Shots fired already. We're only 5 minutes into the show and the Falcons Twitter's going to be coming for me. But yeah, so hopefully this sort of helps people think a few years in advance how to get there. I had a question for you guys straight off the bat, just to get you thinking and sort of set the scene, set the tone for how this show's going to go. Okay, so in a dynasty league, who are you guys taking? Are you taking Cooper Kupp or Drake London? Brad?
Cooper Kupp.
Dan?
See, I think it's still Cooper Kupp as well.
I'm taking Drake London. So this is exactly the kind of conversation that I wanted to spur on, is where do we sit on the spectrum? Because in my mind, you can play redraft in a dynasty league, and obviously you can't play dynasty in a redraft league, but in a dynasty league, you've got sort of 6 to maybe 8 to 10 teams that are all going for it each year. So they're essentially playing a redraft sort of game. And then you've got the back end of the teams, you've got sort of like the 2 to 4 to 6 who have the awareness to think, okay, this is not my year. I'm not going to compete. I'm not going to go for it. So who are they taking? They're probably taking, like, what good is Cooper Kupp to them?
See, I get what you say. I look at Dynasty, and maybe this sometimes can be my downfall, but I look at it in a spectrum of, okay, if this was a real team, how would I build out my roster and what are the reasonings behind it? Now, the reason why I have a Cooper Kupp over a Drake London is I really like Drake London. I like what his potential is. I liked him coming out of the draft. I don't like his quarterback and his run-heavy scheme.
That's fair.
Arthur Smith, we saw obviously when he was OC in Tennessee, a lot of run-heavy. Drafting of Bijan Robinson. You got Cordarrelle Patterson, Tyler Algier, who had a good year. You've got Kyle Pitts, Drake London as well. This particular year, I'm more a Cooper Kupp because he's got a Matthew Stafford throwing him the ball. And granted, I know that he was injured last year, Matthew Stafford, but my thought process behind it was, okay, after Cooper Kupp, who's next? There's no one, really. There's no one that's you're sitting there going, oh, I desperately want him. Drake London, like I said, Bijan, Kyle Pitts, Cordarrelle Patterson.
Yeah.
So I think at the end of the day, though, it comes down to the quarterback for me. I don't trust Desmond Ridder yet. I have to see it. I haven't seen it yet. Granted, he hasn't played very much, but he's my reasoning why. But then again, this may also lead into further down the track. I'm contradicting myself and speaking out of both sides of my mouth here, but we'll get to that a little bit later.
Brad, I love what you said there, that you know Matthew Stafford, and you were talking about how you know what you're going to get from Matthew Stafford this year. Because that's the perfect kind of redraft sort of answer here. So maybe to someone who is playing in a team that's rebuilding, what Matthew Stafford's going to give them this year, it's kind of useless to them. Let me put it to you this way. What about, instead of Drake London, what about Garrett Wilson? Cooper Kupp or Garrett Wilson?
Cooper Kupp.
Still Cooper Kupp. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Dan.
Garrett Wilson's going to come back up in our conversation.
Okay, cool.
Later, so.
Cool.
Okay, so from my point of view, you look at where you're going to draft Cooper Kupp and you look at where you're going to draft Drake London. I think you can get a player with similar upside to London and similar point scoring for this year and next year and so on. The same point where you're drafting London or even later than where you're getting him. The issue with London, like Brad said, quarterback. We don't know what's happening there. Is Desmond Ridder going to be the guy for the future? Is he going to be able to support enough of a passing attack where London's scoring well enough that you're going to take him as high as you are? Whereas with Cooper Kupp, yeah, he's only got, 4 years left maybe? How old is he? I don't think is he 30 yet? I think he's on the borderline of being 30.
He is, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So I know he's had a couple of injuries, but you look at the way he plays and you look at the numbers that he puts up, you're going to get at least 3 more solid, really solid years out of him from what I think. Whereas you look at Drake London, we don't know if we're going to get 3 really solid years out of him because of the situation that Atlanta have where they run heavy. They don't have the quarterback that I think is going to be able to support that. So from my point of view, I'm going to take Cooper Kupp because I know what he's going to give me. And then I can build my roster around that and build young around Cooper Kupp as well with players that are going to probably outscore Drake London.
What about Garrett Wilson?
Oh, he's so tough for me because
yeah,
he's going to start going super high in drafts. And I really like him as well. And we've seen the numbers he can put up in that offense with poor quarterback play. The question is, what Aaron Rodgers is he going to get? And for how many years? I'm a Packers fan, so I know what Rodgers can do. And watching him last year, he wasn't playing well. And there was a number of reasons for that. He's still going to be able to support a really good scoring wide receiver, which Garrett Wilson will be. But if we get the Rodgers that I think we're going to get, and that's scorched earth Rodgers, he's got a massive chip on his shoulder. And we know the sort of play that he can put up when he's feeling that way. I think Garrett Wilson is an awful lot closer to Cooper Kupp than what Drake London is.
100%. And that would reflect in my dynasty rankings as well at wide receiver. I've got Garrett Wilson at number 6 in wide receiver. And then I've got Drake London at 10 and a few people in between. I got Chris Olave at 9 in there as well. But I just wanted to put it out there to you guys just to try and get that perspective of, and that's a really good point because that's how a lot of people play dynasty is they think like, okay, so we don't know about Matthew Stafford, but we know that Cooper Kupp has still got at least another sort of 1, 2, 3 seasons left. And most people play in that sort of 2 to 3 year window, that range, which is kind of what we're looking for as well when we do this as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, go Brad.
No. I was going to say the only other thing, the reason why I would pick Cooper Kupp is Sean McVay is still the coach. Now, yes, the Rams have sold off parts this offseason, trading Jalen Ramsey, letting some of their guys go, Leonard Floyd, etc. But they're still decent enough to keep Sean McVay around because Sean McVay was mulling retirement. Yeah. He's coming back, so they're not going to bottom out. Even if Stafford plays this year, retires at the end of the year, if the Rams want to keep Sean McVay around, they will need to get a quarterback of a decent standard and quality onto the team to keep Sean McVay from retiring. And the Rams seem as I guess, insistent on having McVay around as they possibly can. So to
Mm.
me, it's sort of you go, okay, yeah, Stafford plays this year, he retires at the end of the year. But what we could see happen is, and I've said it to Dan and things like that, that what happens if the Cardinals bottom out, they end up with the number 1 pick in the draft next year. They go to try and draft a guy like Caleb Williams, and they've put Kyler Murray on the chopping block to trade. The Rams seem like the perfect sort of a team who, as we all know with the Rams, F them picks.
Yeah.
That's sort of that the Rams seem like a team that would be more than willing to jump on something like that to keep a guy like Sean McVay around, to keep him interested so he can create the scorched earth offense with Kyler Murray at quarterback.
I love where you're going with that. I'm not opposed to that at all. And the Rams play football very similar to the way I played Dynasty fantasy football in the
F them picks.
No, not F them picks. I love my picks. I will give up anything to get the guys that I want. They might not even be particularly good players, but if I want them, I will give up anything to go get them.
Yeah.
I'll just do one more for you before we get into the actual episode. I was just thinking about it, and it could set the tone nicely here. Okay, Jerry Jeudy or Jackson Smith and Jigba?
JSN.
Dan, no context?
Yeah. JSN as well. I know Russell Wilson had his worst year of his career last year. And with Sean Payton coming in now, I can't imagine Wilson's going to be that bad again. And we saw Jerry Jeudy played fairly well when Russell Wilson played well. Not often, but when they were both playing well, Jeudy put up decent numbers. But I think JSN's more talented from a fantasy perspective, the way he's going to be able to rack up numbers and receptions. And you look at Metcalf and you look at Tyler Lockett there in his way, I think JSN, he just has to bide his time for this year. And then I think he'll start to overtake Lockett when they move forward. And I think JSN's going to be the one that chews up the targets, I believe. Whereas I don't think Judy's going to be that massive target monster.
I love what you said there. Fantasy talent. I feel like Austin Eckler would be someone who's fantasy talented, or Stephon Diggs with the Bills, who's been making headlines because he wants the ball more, not less. They're fantasy talented.
Yeah, JSN's talented, but yeah, from a fantasy point of view, he's the sort of player you want.
Yeah.
The only other thing I think is, are we actually certain that Jerry Jeudy will be on the Broncos next season?
Oh, don't say that. That's going to ruin my receivers for the segment.
But the only reason I say that is, yeah, Jerry Jeudy's shown flashes. He hasn't been able to, I guess, string it consistently through together. He's had a few injuries. But is he the type of receiver who's going to work with what Sean Payton wants? I know there was talk that, Cortland Sutton might be the odd man out in the Broncos receiver room, so to speak. But they did trade up to get Marvin Mims. So does that mean that Jerry Jeudy's on the way out as well?
Yeah, with their first pick of the draft.
Yeah, and I can't guarantee that Jerry Jeudy will be on the Broncos. So therefore, I can't pick Jerry Jeudy.
I think they've had the chance to move him on, though, if they wanted to. I think teams have come calling for him. If they wanted to move him on, they could have.
But previous regime, yes. Remember, this is Sean Payton, who will have a lot more say over the roster than what Nathaniel Hackett did.
True.
Cortland Sutton, cap number for this season, 18 million. Tim Patrick, 11 million for the season. Jerry Jeudy, 4.8 million. So not a huge cost to have Jerry Jeudy on. And then I think that they can pick up his fifth-year option.
Yeah, he's same draft as Joe Burrow. He went. He was a second receiver off the board after Henry Ruggs.
Yeah, pick 15, I think it was.
Yeah. followed by CD Jefferson. Oh, sorry, Rager Jefferson. Man, what a time to be alive. It was Jackson Smith in the Jigba for me as well. But I have them back to back in my rings. I've got Smith and Jigba at 13 and then Judy at 14. And then at 15, I got Jordan Addison. But my thoughts were in the similar line to what you were saying, Dan, that I think the Broncos are going to bounce back. I think they're going to have a much better season this year. I think, if anything, like, I know Tim Patrick was sitting next to Russell Wilson and hanging with Sean Payton at the Nuggets games. But that's a lot of money to pay Tim Patrick, who's an extremely talented receiver. But when you can, like we were talking about, they went out and they got Marvin Mims. They've got Jerry Jeudy on like these affordable contracts, and they're not in a huge position. I mean, I know they do splash out a lot of money, but I think that they're probably going to go with the younger, more talented, more affordable options there.
I just think with Tim Patrick actually suits what Sean Payton wants to do a lot better than what Cortland Sutton will. So that's why I think Sutton might be first man out the door, possibly. But then I wouldn't be surprised if Jerry Jeudy is also on his way out, because just remember, he's not the last regime's guy. He was the regime before the last regime's guy. So, Sean Payton will want to bring in his own guys. And like we said, we saw that by trading up for Marvin Mims, talking about using Greg Dulcich as his Taysom Hill. He's looking to recreate his New Orleans Saints teams that were so successful. So if that means moving Jerry Jeudy out, Cortland Sutton out, it's going to start happening. So that's my thought process behind JSN over.
I'm here for it. While we're talking about Marvin Mims, what are our initial thoughts on him? I mean, I guess we've pretty much just spelled it out, really, that we really like him and that Sean Payton went and got him. Do you think that he's sort of going to pave the way to be maybe one of these sort of upper tier receivers to start with, or to watch for a season to see how it goes? Hard to say at this time.
I think it's a bit hard to say at this time. I think he will be probably their starting slot receiver. And Jeudy will be, I guess, more so the move guy who you'll see on the, the jet sweeps types of things and the motion guy a lot of the times. But without actually sort of seeing what their thought process is. And it's a little bit hard to say at this time. I would expect him to be one of those guys who, if you're looking for your fantasy teams, you're probably looking him more of a taxi squad stash, maybe a flex receiver type of guy.
Depth piece.
Yeah. He's that guy that you might have to chuck into your lineup when you've got a bye week and 3/4 of your team's out, and you're just looking for anyone to put up anything that's better than a 0. He sort of seems like that for this first season, until we see as well how the new offense worked, how Russell Wilson is, etc., etc.
Perfect. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, because I go.
Oh, no, I was just saying Marvin Mims is super talented, so I don't think it's going to be all that long before he's starting to take a massive chunk of that target share as well. But like Brad said, I think you stash him on your taxi to start the season, and then you keep track of how he's going. And then if you need to put him up into the main roster, you do, to plug and play at some point if you need to. But for that first year, like I said, they've got Jeudy, they got Patrick, they got Sutton still. There's a lot of mouths to feed there. I don't think he's going to give you too much fantasy value in his first season. But like Brad said as well, if they move on Sutton, even if Jeudy gets moved on, Mims is going to step into a big role.
So I know that I said that we were going to go fairly easy on this first show and settle into it nicely. Although I did task you, but I thought that this would be a nice get to know your hosts kind of activity to do. So what we're going to do is we're going to do quickly. Well, we're already like halfway through the show, so we'll see how we go with the ladder of it. But what we're going to do is take a look at a few guys in Dynasty formats that we feel like we're higher on at each position. And if we have time at this stage, we might have to save it for next week. But if we have time, we'll go through a few guys that were a bit lower on, and then guys who were targeting a bit further down the line. And straight off the bat, we were talking about it over Twitter last night, which I was super happy about. Brad and Nate, if you're listening, Brad, I was worried that you might have this moment of oh God, what have I done? Because the guy that I feel like I'm higher on than most other people and that we were talking about last night. Where is he going for my rankings? It's Clayton Tune of the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, I am talking about it. Look at Brad in dismay. The reaction's priceless. But I just want to lay a little bit of a foundation. I'm not going to spend too much time on it because, you know, he's not going to be, he's more than likely not going to be the next Brock Purdy. However, having said that, there is a path forward for him that I can see. And then I went and started scouring around a little bit on Twitter, doing a bit of digging, and there is a bit of a buzz starting to develop with Clayton Tune. The reason it's happening is obviously Kyler injured, Colt McCoy also dealing with injury at the moment. So he's had this opportunity to get these reps with teams that he wants. There's a path. Now, I know that they're going to go with Kyler and they're going to have a strong pick next season, but there's a chance where Clayton Tune can prove himself. And I feel like I'm higher on him than other people. Discuss.
Dan, I'll let you go first because you're on the Tune train.
Okay, so I liked what I saw in the pre-draft process when I was looking into quarterbacks and every other position. When I was looking at quarterbacks, he stood out to me because there was something. He doesn't look and go, oh, wow, that is incredible. But he does a lot of really good things and he puts it together. And like you said, he might not be the next Brock Purdy, but what do you look at Brock Purdy and go, oh, geez, okay, that jumps out and flashes at you. But combine everything together, and he was able to put together a really good season. I think Clayton Tune has that sort of ability as well. And like you said, he's in a really good spot at Arizona in the sense that there's a path to playing time for him. And if he can grab that with both hands, then he could make the most of it. And I don't think we're going to see Colt McCoy too often.
That's my thing is if in a dynasty rookie draft, if you're in like the 5th round, you're using your last pick, I think he's worth a dart.
Yeah.
Brad, talk us off this this ledge that we're on.
Okay, so I'm going to try and stay composed in this. Brock Purdy is good because of Kyle Shanahan.
Yes. I mean, if Clayton Tune was in the 49ers, it'd be a completely different story.
Exactly. and the talent around him. Because you look at running back, you've got quite possibly the best running back in the league at the moment. It's debatable, but it could be the best running back in the league at the moment with Christian McCaffrey. You look at the wide receivers, you've got Brandon Ayuk, you've got Debo, and you've got potentially one, it depends on how you rank your tight ends, you've got one of the best in George Kittle. Can you name me the wide receivers on the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, come on. You got Hollywood Brown, you got Little Mighty Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's it.
Exactly. No way.
So,
hey. Rondale Moore is a very good footballer, and Greg Dortch did a little bit last year.
Okay, so those 3 guys combined might be struggling to get on a ride at a show because they have to be this high to go on the ride.
No, so this is an argument for Clayton Tune because his best receiver was Nathaniel Dell, who's probably the smallest player in existence.
You just walked into that, Brad.
And he was awesome. And so just a side note here, we watch our college football on KO in Australia here. For whatever reason, last season, we got a shitload of Houston games. And I watched a lot of Clayton Tune and Nathaniel Dell. And I remember saying in pre-draft, I was like, I know Dell's small, but man, he's so good. He's such a good route runner. And I think that pairing of Clayton Tune and Hollywood Brown might be something special. Just might be.
But was the receivers on Houston, were they all 5'7" or shorter?
No, of course not.
No, so that's the thing. It's okay to have one. I don't know if you can have multiple. But at the end of the day, too, like, yes, you've got a Trey McBride and you've still got Zach Ertz on the team. But I think it's just the talent level isn't there for the rest of the team, the offensive line. The talent isn't there. Like, okay, so I look at Clayton Tune as maybe at best, I have his ceiling as not good and too good to be a backup, not good enough to be a starter. He's in
Of
that in
course.
between for me.
Of course. And I'm not saying that he'll be a starter, but
No.
you've spiraled me into a week one bold prediction, Brad.
That's my that's for me is okay. If he does everything really well and he hits on everything, he's going to be a guy who, okay, Dan, this week we've got the quarterback out. He can go in for the one game, but that's as much as we want to do because after that, it tails off. So I think he's going to be, I guess maybe you call him the modern day Chase Daniel.
I'm happy with that.
But I don't know if that really means that he's good.
Okay.
Or as Dan was saying, and I thought I was having a little bit of a chuckle because I thought he was going to stop his sentence where he goes, he doesn't do a lot of things great. And I just thought he was going to stop. That's what I thought, because that's what mine would have been. He doesn't do a lot of things great. And that's and that's it. But yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a reason why he went where he did in the draft, and it wasn't necessarily because of talent or anything like that. I think it was just a necessity, and like I said, I could be wrong, but I just don't see it.
Yeah, for sure. And look, coming out of high school, like it wasn't this like 5-star recruit amazing. He did play really, really well in Houston, though. Right now, would you rather have on your fantasy team, would you rather have Clayton Tune or Kyle Trask?
Is there an option 3?
No, this is the point of the show. We're going deep, buddy. We're going real deep.
The only reason I'm going to say this guy's name is, oh God, I feel dirty saying either of them.
You're not saying you like them. You're just saying you would rather have.
Nah, I guess it would be Clayton Tune for the pure fact that Kyle Trask has been pretty much told that he'll be the backup, and also there was times last season where especially like week 18, the Bucks didn't play they didn't play Tom Brady or whatever, and instead of going with Kyle Trask to go, let's see what we've got in this guy, they went, no, we're going to throw out 32-year-old Blaine Gabbert, however old he is, and that was there. So to me, that's enough of enough of a sign from the Buccaneers to say what they think of Kyle Trask.
Yeah, if you're a second round pick and you've been in the same team that drafted you, you're a second round pick. You're sitting behind Tom Brady and he finally retires, and that team brings in Baker Mayfield and you're in a competition with Baker Mayfield, you're not seeing much of the field because they've shown you what they think of you. Because if they thought much of Kyle Trask, they wouldn't have brought in Baker Mayfield to compete with him.
And also, it must be noted that when you try and type in your phone Kyle Trask, autocorrects it corrects it to trash. So that's, I don't know about that. It's just one of those funny things that you sit there and you go, yeah, maybe the phones know. Maybe the phones know.
It's incredibly foreboding. Okay, last one real quick, because we're spending way too much time on 5th round rookie quarterbacks. Clayton Tune or Carson Wentz?
Tune, just because he's on a team.
Yeah, I was going to say, Clayton Tune's got a chance to start at least. I don't think Carson Wentz has that.
Brad, give me your quarterback that you feel like you're higher on than generally other people.
Anthony Richardson.
Oh, you must be very high then, because he's getting pumped up.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking when I got my rankings. I must admit, I looked at the Fantasy Pros rankings. Now that might have been redraft that they had them in, but on Fantasy Pros, Anthony Richardson was sitting at QB 18 on their rankings.
That's gotta be
That
That's
was
gotta be
redraft.
in a redraft. I'm looking at the Dynasty rankings. He's 12, which I actually gotta say, that's not as high as I thought he was.
Well, I actually think he could be a top 8 or 9 quarterback this year.
Right
This
ahead of
year?
him, just ahead of him is Kyler Murray, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields.
I would take him over everyone but Fields.
Yeah, I think I would too. And
Well,
I'm not
the
even a
thing
high
is-
Richardson guy.
Because
I love
the thing
Anthony
is,
Richardson, and the thing is, you're looking at the rushing upside.
exactly. That's
Like for
my
fantasy
point.
wise, yeah, he doesn't need to be an elite passer for fantasy wise. Look at Justin Fields. Like Justin Fields has, from where he was in college to where he is now as a passer, it's night and day, and not in a good way. And a lot of that's because of what the Bears have surrounded him with to start his career. But then you look at the rushing upside and the rushing stats that he's putting up, and he's an elite quarterback for fantasy. Anthony Richardson, I think, has that same capability. And they'll use him a lot at the goal line as well.
And Daniel Jones last year, he was like what, a top 12 quarterback last year in fantasy. He threw 15 touchdowns for the season.
Yeah.
It was the fact that he ran for about 800 or 900 yards, which is at the end of the day, the way that fantasy's played. Some people don't like it, but at the end of the day, if you are a running quarterback, it's a cheat code, and you don't actually have to be a good passer. Anthony Richardson, I do believe, is a good passer. I just think that the talent that he was working with at college was what it didn't really show out for him. And yes, everyone's a little bit worried because he didn't have as many starts in his college career as what other quarterbacks do. But I think he could be in that discussion of, if he has a year that I'm hoping he does, because I really like him as a prospect. As I said to you guys on the draft show, I was a little sad when the Panthers did trade up to number 1, because I was sort of hoping that they might have been able to get Anthony Richardson as the quarterback, but I also would have taken Anthony Richardson number 1 just because that's how much I liked him as a prospect. But he could be one of those guys that come next year, you go into your fantasy drafts, and especially if you're in a super flex league or something like that in a startup, and you have your Mahomes, Burrow, Hurts, Fields, Anthony Richardson as one of those top 6-7 quarterbacks.
just quietly, casually putting him in there. Did you say that you in real football, real Carolina Panthers football, you would have taken Anthony Richardson 1 over Bryce Young?
Yeah,
that's huge.
Because my thought is, so Bryce Young, and don't be mad at me, Panthers fans. I love Bryce Young. I think
Brad's a Panthers fan, just quickly.
Yeah.
So you're allowed to criticize your own team.
So to me, Bryce Young is the highest floor quarterback early on. Like, he's got the most, like, just in his preparation, everyone always said that, the Alabama coaches were saying that they would send their film out, and by the time they came in on Monday, Bryce Young had already jotted down, hey, this is where we could have improved. This is what I did. This is the read that I made, blah, blah, blah. He knew, and he was already on to the next team. CJ Stroud, to me, is the best passer of those quarterbacks that went in, just accuracy-wise and quarterback play. He just seemed to have it. But to me, Anthony Richardson has that highest floor where he could go, and lowest ceiling potentially, where he could be one of those guys where we look back in a couple of years and go, wow, they really whiffed on picking Anthony Richardson. It hasn't worked out for him. Or everyone could sit back there in a couple of years' time and go, can you believe he fell to 4? That's just how I see him because there's just no one like him. I mean, he's bigger than Cam Newton, or just as big as Cam Newton sort of thing. He's 240, 250 pounds, but ran a 4.44 40, which,
Yeah, not so stuff.
Cam Newton was one of the best, one of the best, most physical running quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. And he was about 0.2 of a second slower in his 40 than Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
And I think with Richardson as well is if he has the right coaching around him, then the sky's the limit because of those traits as well, the athletic traits. And you look at who his coach is, and you look where he came from and what he did with Jalen Hurts.
I was just going to say, I'm very excited to see Shane Steichen. It's going to be this Shane Steichen versus Jonathan Gannon little coach off. I'm excited to see how it turns out.
No contest, my God.
One is
of Jonathan Gannon at the moment.
One is a really good offensive coordinator, and the other one's going to be known forever as the guy who went shots, pew pew pew, pew explosives.
I think Jonathan Gannon could be one and done.
No, I think that they'll give him a lot more rope than what Shane Steichen will get. Like, think about it. If Anthony Richardson bombs in the first 2 years, Shane Steichen's gone, but Jonathan Gannon, he could still be there in 3 years because they might only just be on to their like first rookie quarterback or, whatever, wherever they feel like Kyler is playing at a good level.
Gannon has the built-in excuse, and it's not like it's just the way football works. He's got the built-in excuse of my guys that I've picked on this team start with Paris Johnson.
Yeah,
Everyone
exactly.
else is not my guy.
Yeah,
Shane Steichen, and Chris Ballard have this is our guy.
Yeah.
And that's where it can sort of generally, if they bottom out and they go 0-17 this year, the Cardinals will be stoked because they'll either have the first pick in the draft and take Caleb Williams, or they'll get an absolute king's ransom for that pick. A lot more than what the Bears got from the Panthers moving up from 9-1. Or they'll be able to do that. And then he can sort of go, well, we've got to give the guy a chance to pick his players. He didn't have that chance. So that's where, as much as, I'm not sure whether Gannon is a good coach because we're not sure. But he probably does have that little bit of a longer leash because he's starting year one with everyone but his own players. So that's like a built-in, maybe excuse isn't the word, but it's a built-in
safety net.
Safety net, yeah.
Exactly. And not to mention Monty Ossenfort, first year as general manager for the Cardinals. Whereas you think about the Colts, I mean, Chris Ballard, this could all fall apart for him as well. They've got Jim Irsay overlooking them as the master puppeteer.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to watch it play out.
It'll be interesting. Okay, Brad, right now, Clayton Tune or Anthony Richardson?
Oh, he's stumped.
I would take Anthony Richardson if he had 2 broken legs. I would still take Anthony Richardson out on that field with 2 broken legs ahead of Clayton Tune.
Even though Clayton Tune has the better passer rating in that situation.
I'd take him.
I'm making an assumption. I'd take
Anthony Richardson with 2 broken legs and 2 broken arms, and he's got to headbutt the ball for his passing. I'd still take him over.
He's probably talented enough to do it as well.
Yeah, probably. That's
well, one of those quarterbacks is going to be starting week 1, Brad.
Yeah,
and my bold prediction is it'll be Clayton Tune. Okay, Dan, bring us home. We're gone. We're way over time, so this is it. We're going to do quarterbacks. We're not going to do any other skill position. We'll do. We'll get your quarterback that you're higher on, and then we'll see how quickly we can get through lower on, and then we'll close it out.
So, like Brad, I was on Fantasy Pros rankings as well, their consensus rankings, and they've got Tua under Dynasty at quarterback 14, which
sandwich right between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud is Tua Tagovailoa.
Yeah, and part of me understands why, because I think that's got the injuries baked into that. But man, when we saw him healthy on the field in the first year with McDaniel and then with Tyreek going nuts as well and Jalen Waddle, Tua was top 6, top 7 quarterback. So at quarterback 14, I'm a lot higher on Tua than that. I think he's easily top 10 quarterback capability as long as he's healthy, which we can't pick injuries. We've got to assume everyone stays healthy and work from there. I think Tua's a top 10 quarterback for fantasy this year.
And I feel like if you're, unless you're talking about Matthew Stafford, it's really hard to just apply injury, like constant injuries to players or associate them. Like, I don't like to associate players with injuries unless it's like Will Fuller, Matthew Stafford types where you know that they have those sort of like ongoing, either the soft tissue injuries or Stafford's case, back injuries. I will say though, looking at the rankings, 14 sounds low for me, but if you look at everyone above him, it's sort of like, I think I would actually rather have most, if not all, of the players who are ranked above him. Sort of maybe from like 11 on, where they got Kyler, Dak, Deshaun, Watson, Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, and sort of goes up from there, obviously. So yeah, I know what you mean. It's like, it sounds low and he's being awesome, but who, like, are you taking, so Dak or Tua?
Dak.
I'm taking Dak.
I'm taking Tua.
Yeah, I'd be completely fine with that as well.
Because I think
Dak's 29.
Where Dak stands, we saw his best fantasy season so far when he was running the ball a lot and picking up those touchdowns to boost his numbers. We haven't seen that for 2 or 3 years now. And I don't think we're going to see it a lot moving forward either with his injuries.
I'm going to push back on you on that little bit because Dak has an offensive line. Tua doesn't. Like, they've brought in Teron Armstead, and but they're constantly looking for this offensive line to try and protect Tua. And Teron Armstead, when healthy, can be one of the better right tackles in the game. But he's 33. He's quite injured. But you look at the Dallas offensive line, and I know that, once again, talking out of both sides of my mouth, because they can have some injuries on their offensive line with Tyron Smith. But I just think the rest of that offensive line and that offense is, maybe not the offense as a whole, but that offensive line is what keeps Dak upright more. And maybe it is just because it's the injuries that I have in my mind that's baked into why I'm a little bit lower on Tua, because like you said, when he's healthy, he played really well. But it's just the fact that there was talk that, he might be retiring this season, like in the off season. It wasn't ended up, he's playing, but it's still, that's enough for me to go, if there's talk coming out that he might be retiring, I will let someone else take Tua.
Is that talk for the sake of talk, or is that?
No, I think just from listening from other people on other podcasts and, just reading little things, I don't think that was as, like, just talk. I think that might have been a little bit more real than what some people might think.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's say, I know what you mean. It sort of seems like he's down to his last life in a sense, of 9 lives. I just think, like, if you were to consider that he is never going to have a concussion again, then I think he's got a really, really, really high ceiling, especially with the receivers and the team around him. And Mike McDaniel, I think, will do a lot of ingenious things. The problem for Dak is now that Kellen Moore's out the building, is it the Mike McCarthy show?
Yep.
But on the flip side for Dak, like that stretch, was it the 2021 season, the first sort of like 6 weeks or between week 2 and week 6, where Dak was going off week after week, building on his passing yards.
He set career highs for about 4 weeks in a row, and I think the last one ended up being nearly like 500 yards or something ridiculous.
Yeah, and again, that game against the Falcons is burned into my brain.
Yeah,
not just because of the onside kick, but like Dak was lighting them up. CeeDee Lamb was playing well. They've got Brandon Cooks now. Yeah, I know what you mean. I know exactly.
Gallup. Tony Pollard. It's like I said, it's just, to me, it's just and maybe like we said, it is the injuries that's baked in, but yeah, that just leaves me enough for someone to go, look, I'll leave Tua to someone else, and if he ends up being quarterback 1 for the season, well, congratulations to that person, but I'm not taking him.
Yeah. Now, fair enough. That sounds good. I like what you're saying. Let's see if we can maybe power through this last bit. Let's go quarterbacks that we are not so high on. If you had anyone in particular, for me, like I like to give every quarterback a chance. One quarterback that I just feel like I'm completely out on altogether is Trey Lance. I just there's just no part of me that has seen his quarter of football over the last 2 years that really wants any part of it. Even if he goes to a new team, yeah, it's not the kind of start to a career that you want to see. And if I had him, I'd be trying to move him as quickly as possible.
Yeah, I'm out on Trey Lance as well. There was one stat that I remember seeing when I think they said it before the start of last season. He threw, in his whole college career, he threw as many passes as what Trevor Lawrence did in his first year at Clemson.
Yeah.
So I just, yeah. And also too, if there's talk now that he is potentially, it's Brock Purdy's job to lose. And if Brock Purdy loses his job, it's to Sam Darnold, his second choice.
Yeah, who I saw in a headline today from, I think it was RotoWorld or NBC, is Darnold's moved ahead of him in sort of like I guess of the day.
I know we've only seen 3.5 games from Trey Lance, but that's what we've seen. So what have the 49ers seen behind closed doors that is making them hesitant enough that they had to go and get Sam Darnold this offseason?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, go.
I can understand bringing in Sam Darnold, even if you did believe in Trey Lance, because of his injury history, and then Brock Purdy also having the injury as well. I don't think they were, at that point in time, I don't think they were sure where Brock Purdy was going to be come start of the season. So I can see why they would have brought in Sam Darnold. I mean, Sam Darnold of all people, but I think I was in on Trey Lance still, just to stash on my roster. Just hold him until you hopefully see him be able to have that opportunity to be a starter and what he can do. I think the fact that he's now looking like he's behind Sam Darnold, that's just massive red flags now. And even if you're just stashing Trey Lance on your roster, you can't feel good about it.
Is anyone else a little bit excited about Sam Darnold and Kyle Shanahan?
Sure.
No? You sure? Like see what he's done with Nick Mullins and
the thing is, yeah, that's
Brock
the thing.
Purdy. Like, imagine what he could do with Sam Darnold.
Depends on whether Sam Darnold is, and we haven't really seen it yet, but is Sam Darnold the quarterback who, because it honestly feels like with every quarterback that's been successful in that Kyle Shanahan system, is the type of quarterback where, and we saw it last season, where Kyle Shanahan sits there and he goes to him, right, on 3rd and 6, we're running this 7-yard comebacker to Brandon Ayuk. He gets on this step, you let go of the ball, and we saw a couple times last year that play was made even when it shouldn't have been. And, the quarterback does exactly what Kyle Shanahan says. Will Sam Darnold be that type of quarterback who does what Kyle Shanahan says? That's the thing I'm just curious about.
Yeah, even Jameson Williams for me is starting to venture into this area of like, okay, you missed most of your entire rookie season and now you're going to miss the first few games. I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be the same, and I'm sure I'm going to love Jameson Williams once he actually starts playing. It's just that start to the career just always it worries me. But your reaction, Brad, that was perfect. It's like, are you excited about Sam Darnold? Sure.
Yeah. Hey, I went through the Sam Darnold experience.
You did, yeah.
2 seasons.
Went through the entire roller coaster of Sam Darnold when he was getting rushing touchdowns galore to start at Carolina, and then the massive drop off. So,
and then
he's seen
injury,
it all,
and then the nearly getting the Panthers into the playoffs last year.
Yeah,
and yeah, I've been through it all.
Brad, give me your quarterback you feel like you're a bit low on.
So this is probably once again a maybe I saw it because I realized now that, I looked at the redraft rankings, but I have been seeing a lot of hype for this guy, and Dan knows him also well. I am way down on Aaron Rodgers this year.
Ah, yeah.
This is the worst offensive line he's been behind. Like, if you look at their guards, they got Laken Tomlinson, good guard. I wouldn't call him upper echelon, but he's a good guard. Elijah Vera Tucker, I really like. And then their center is either Connor McGovern or Joe Tippmann, who they drafted this year. So they got some nice parts on the interior. The problem is the tackles. You've got 40-year-old Dwayne Brown, who's coming off a shoulder problem.
I like Dwayne Brown. I mean,
I like Dwayne Brown when he was probably 30, not 40.
He's had a great career at Seattle.
Yeah, I liked him maybe when he was 30 and not 40 that he is now. You've got him coming off a long-term injury. Mekhi Becton is playing at right tackle, who did not play last year, broke his kneecap, and now they're reporting like a real win for them is the fact that Mekhi Becton's lost about 20, 30 pounds. Like, that's probably not something that you're happy with, your tackle, who was supposed to be your franchise guy, who hardly played. Then that is just there's one on the offensive line, and Rodgers isn't as fleet of foot as he once was. We all know that as the quarterbacks get older, they lose their elusiveness or their ability to do it. But yeah, I think the Jets could be good. I just worry about that offensive line because, like I said, Becton hasn't been healthy. Dwayne Brown's not been healthy now properly for a couple of years. So, and then last year when they moved Elijah Vera Tucker, who's a really good guard, they moved him out to tackle. He got injured last year. So it's just one of those things with that I worry about that offensive line. And with, we always say that quarterbacks, they don't slowly reach that cliff and then come on a downhill of their career. They get to the top and then they plummet.
So it's not exactly the silver service that Tom Brady was rolled out in Tampa when he arrived.
Yeah, I just think, you looked at the Packers every single year managed to pick up these guys who are undrafted free agent guards or tackles who then turn into all pros, or just the Jets just don't have that. And that's why I'm just down on the Jets because of that. And
that's probably that's their biggest glaring weakness on that side. So, and we've seen when Rodgers was at the Packers, even when our offensive line was really good, there were moments where it collapsed and the Rodgers struggled massively. So I can understand the massive concerns you've got there with him. Again, Rodgers with a chip on his shoulder is a different kind of beast. It's whether he can stay upright and have enough time.
Yeah. In a dynasty format, Clayton Tune or Aaron Rodgers?
Oh, here we go. We've got him.
I'll take Rodgers.
Good, well said. I know it's because you just don't want that clipped on the internet.
Exactly.
Fair enough. All right, let's bring it home, Dan.
Who am I not as high on? I had so much trouble with this because, like you said, when we're talking about Tua with the people in front of him, you look at the way the rankings are and the draft ADP is, it's hard to shuffle people around. And like you look at it and you look at Kirk Cousins and what was he? I'll have a quick look. He was down at quarterback 17 on Fantasy Pros for Dynasty. I have him higher than that, but like age-wise, he's pushing down. So you can't drop him down any further than there. You can't drop Jared Goff down any further. Daniel Jones at QB 16. If anything, you'd imagine he's going up from there. Another season with Brian DeBoll. From where I've got it, I think it could be Geno. If he drops, if he doesn't have as good a season as he did last year.
Not my guy.
I know, I'm sorry. But everything went right for him last year, it seemed. And it just came from nowhere. Can he repeat that and do it all over again? Or does he
Yes,
go
yeah.
back to what he has been for pretty much most of his career?
But see, I think you need to throw out his careers to date so far, because he got drafted by the Jets, who are an absolute schmozzle at the time. And then he's moved on to a different team and been a backup. He's moved on, and he spent, the last 4 years with the Seahawks. He is in a situation, it worked for him. He's got that. I think part of the reason why his play fell off towards the end of last season was a lot to do with the rookie tackles in Charles Cross and Abraham Lucas. I think that sort of had a little bit to do with it. But Geno actually played well. Geno was like QB 5 or 6 last
He
year.
finished QB6 on the year.
I thought it was incredible, yeah.
I look, he might fall down for that, but if I'm looking at that list, John, can you read that list again from about QB 10 if you still got it up?
So ahead of Geno is like Jared Goff, Kirk Cousins, Daniel Jones, and then you get into where I was talking before, was CJ Stroud, Tua, Bryce Young, Richardson, Kyler Murray, Dak, Deshaun Watson, Justin Fields. Yeah.
So to me, the guy out of that, the main one that I would move out of over all of them is Deshaun Watson. Deshaun, yeah, he missed the first 8 games of the season last year. First 11 games of the season, I mean. But to me, he was not like, he had a year off, nearly 18, like a year and a half off. Deshaun's the guy for me who I would move down out of all of them, but I would have Geno above a fair chunk of those guys that are on that list. Like, I can understand, Dan, why like you said, it was a 1-year thing. Is that just a 1-year wonder, or is he actually going to be like that moving forward?
Yeah.
But,
in a dynasty format, can see it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think the fact that they re-signed him, and to the contract that they re-signed him to, which was absolutely, like, it was a great contract that they re-signed him to. But yeah, I like Geno. I think he'll do well this year.
Oh, I love Geno.
I can understand. I can understand your thought as to why. But to me, like, QB 16 that he's ranked, I would take him. I'd take him over Tua.
Over Tua.
That's a big call. Wow. I was just we're trying to end the show, not create a new show. I was going to say.
Because, like I said, I keep coming back to the Tua injury thing. Like, and I know it's really hard to predict injuries and things like that, and we don't like doing it. But if Tua, to me, in week 1, if Tua gets a concussion in week 1 or a head knock, that could be his career.
Oh, it changes the entire season.
Yeah.
And I know that Tua's got maybe like better weapons, because I think as a tandem, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle is a better tandem than Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And John, even as a Seahawks fan, I think you can admit that too, that you would probably have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle over Tyler Lockett and DK.
If I'm taking my fan hat off, then for sure, yeah, of course. But if I put my fan hat on, I'm perfectly happy.
You just need to put JSN in there with them, and you go, well, there you go. See?
Yeah.
But I think I like, for me personally, a lot of it comes down to, a lot of this can come back down to, I guess, real football talk. And I like the offensive line of the Seattle Seahawks a lot better than what I like the offensive line of the Miami Dolphins. So therefore, Geno would get a bump up, I guess, for me, up over someone like Tua.
Yeah, I mean, the thing to Dan's point, like, Geno could play well this coming season, and the Seahawks could still move on from him because the contract is so flexible. So I know this is a conversation for another pod, because I do love Geno this year, but looking beyond that as well, I'm not sure what the path is forward for him. And he's mentioned that he wants to retire as Seahawks. So I think it's a good call. I think that there's players below him that I probably would rather have in a dynasty format. Like, I'd rather have Kenny Pickett, who's a spot below him. So yeah, I'm with you in that.
You spoke about Deshaun Watson before. His drop off in play, I know he missed so much time with everything that went on, and I won't get into it because we
don't need to
send into absolute chaos pretty quick. But when he came back, his play was nothing like what it was that we expect from him. Do we think that's going to continue, or having a full off season now in that system, having everything, I guess not so much behind him, but I think now the focus is more for him, more on football. I don't know what to expect from him still with how he finished off that season.
And maybe that's for me why, like, I have him bumped down that little bit. Like I have Deshaun, I'd have him bumped down a little bit more because I just don't know what's going to happen. And there was the conversations that he, that they had at the end of last season where he's made comments to the media that he was going to sit down with Kevin Stefanski and have a man's conversation about how he wanted the offense to be changed because he wanted it to suit him more, which, that's all well and good. And you could do that if you're Kevin Stefanski, but his ethos and his background is run to set up the pass type of thing. Will that work if you try and change that and try and bring a guy like Nick Chubb, who is, like we said, I think maybe one of the top 3 or 4 running backs in the league, just as pure runner? Is it worth hurting your team that much by not giving the ball to a guy like that to try and make Deshaun happy?
Yeah.
Or will it just start off as, to me, like the best season that Russell Wilson seemed to have to start with, the last of the let Russ cook season, where it was, right, let's let Russell Wilson in Seattle do everything the way he wants, throw the ball a crap ton, do what he wants. As soon as he started turning the ball over, Pete Carroll went, nah, enough of that. We're back to running the ball. We'll run it 7,000 times in a game. We'll run it. They'll have an 11-man box. I'll have every single person up at the line, and I'll still run that damn ball because that's what I want to do. Will Stefanski end up reverting back to that if Deshaun comes out in the first 2-3 weeks and he's 3 touchdowns, 7 interceptions? If that happens, I think going, I'm back to Nick Chubb. I'm just pounding the ball with Nick Chubb, and then we're moving forward like this.
I think Deshaun Watson has the biggest variance as far as where his outcome can be for this season, especially, but moving forward as well. I think the variance for where he can finish as the season goes is probably as big as it comes from any of the quarterbacks, to be honest.
And here you go, John. I will answer this for you. I would pick Clayton Tune over Deshaun Watson just because I know, like football wise, Deshaun Watson is the far better player, but just with everything that's happened the last couple of years, I will not touch Deshaun Watson with a 10-foot pole, no matter what the scenario is. And people can be annoyed at me for that if they want to, and that's fine. But for me, in terms of fantasy, I will not touch him at all. And I would take Clayton Tune over Deshaun Watson. That's my one.
I'm with you. I'm exactly with you. Like I'm massive on post-hype sleepers. I love when everyone gets excited about someone and then they don't pan out. And so the crowd sort of then moves on to someone else and gets all excited. Meanwhile, like I let the dust settle, and then that's when I love to screw people up. So like I think I'm probably a bit higher on Russell Wilson this year than a few people because I think he will probably bounce back. He has to bounce back to something.
Yeah, I was going to say
better than last
year. He was last year. So yeah.
Deshaun Watson was the same. It's such a shame because like he led me to one of my first Dynasty championships, him and Justin Herbert. And then, as soon as all of that started happening, it was like, okay, I got to get him off my team, and I did. Who have been able to turn into CJ Stroud now a few years later, so which I'm happy about. But yeah, I'm completely with you. Like, I think Watson will have a good season. I think it'll be better than what. It's the same thing with Russell Wilson. Anything would be better than what we saw last year. It was that bad.
Yeah. But do you trust it and want it on your roster?
No. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Ask me again in July or August. All right.
Yeah, I think come August, moving into September, then we'll get a good gauge of it.
For sure. Let's close out the show. There's going to be a lot more episodes to come between now and August, which I'm excited for. And then you'll hear a lot more of us on various other shows. Dan, you got a show running that's going to come up, and Brad, you've got a show running as well. So this is just sort of the first sort of like nice little teaser tester. But Dan, you wanted to close out the show by promoting awesome charity bowl that you've put together that you're getting people involved in.
Yeah, basically, it's this time of year where you're looking at all the big charity leagues around everywhere on fantasy Twitter, and obviously there's a Scottish Bowl, and I'm involved in a couple other ones as well, the Warrior Bowl and the JTT Cup, and I've been involved with them for a couple of years now, and it's just the amount of good that it does for the whole community, and I've met some of the best people on Twitter through these charity events, like charity leagues, and there's not that many. There may only be one other one that'll run this year, I think, based in Australia for Australia charities. And I just felt there was a void there that we could fill. And it was something I thought about last year, but I just didn't have the time to commit to it. And I thought, what better time to do it now? Obviously, we're starting our podcast. What better time to try and do as much good as we can for a charity league? And so I was thinking about what sort of charity I'd want to run it for. And for me, mental health awareness is massive. And I think for so many people, it is as well. So it was an easy decision to say, okay, mental health charities for me is the one I'm going to go with. And I decided Beyond Blue and Black Dog Institute. And they're two different charities the way they go about it, but they do amazing work. And I just figured if I can just try and get as many people involved as possible. I had no idea what to expect when I decided to do it and how many people would want to get involved with it. But just this week alone, I think it's not even been a week since I tweeted the first one out saying that I was looking to do it. We could have over $1,000 that'll be committed straight away. And that's not even without much promotion either. That was just one tweet that I put out. So I think this has the potential to be massive in Australia, and I think plenty of people will jump on board. And it's just, if I can do something like this, one small thing to raise as much money and awareness as we can, then I'm more than happy to do that. And I'm not after anything out of it. I just want to get that in the community and the fantasy community on Twitter and everywhere else, and just have some fun with it and raise money for two good causes.
Yeah, it's an awesome initiative that I'm extremely excited for. Brad, you want to just say something now?
Yeah, just I don't know, you got a lot of people, obviously you won't see the behind the scenes sort of thing, but Dan and I have been spending, like we said, it's maybe not quite even a week. It's not even been a week yet, but we've been spending pretty much every night since we've been going back and forth, and a lot of DMs to each other trying to sort out, what should we do in this situation? What should we do in this? And it's all come from the brainchild of Dan. He's come up with this, and he reached out to me and said, what do you think about this? Do you think we should do something like this? And as soon as he said yes, I was like, right, let's jump on board. Let's like I said, we're not doing this to try and get people to say, oh, you guys are amazing or anything. It's not that at all. I jumped on board because I've got a personal story with a friend who I lost years ago with something like this, and I've always been trying to raise money and do certain things for mental health charities and things like that. So as soon as Dan brought that up, I was like, yeah, cool, let's get involved in this and let's do it. And then, as I said to him, I'd like to try and pump it through on our podcast that we're doing to try and get that out there a little bit more. And I think we said to each other when we started mapping this out and how we wanted to do leagues and things like that, we went, if we can fill two leagues for the first year, yeah, it's not a whole heap of money or anything like that, but it's a start. If we could get to two leagues, we'd be stoked. If we could get to that, that was our goal. And then now, as of now, we're sort of up to close to around 50 people who are in already, and that's not including us at all. So the whole point of this is to try and raise some money, and we couldn't pick a specific charity. We wanted it to go to both, so that's why we set it up this way. We're going to have there'll be more details to come, but everything's going to be PayPal to an account, so then we can split this evenly, because it's two worthy charities that we couldn't really decide which one deserved it more, because they both do fantastic work, and we'd like both of them to benefit from this. So guys, if you aren't signed up or you haven't shown any interest yet, please get in touch with Dan, myself, John, if you happen to know John. Like, you speak to John and you're maybe not as comfortable going to some of us or putting it out in public. Like, if you want to get on board, please just get in touch with one of us. We'd love to have you on. It's for a great cause. At the end of the day, there's no prize money, there's no prizes or anything like that, but that's not what it's about. It's about raising money and raising awareness for these great charities, and that's what we want to do going forward, is to try and keep doing this. And we'd like to make this a yearly sort of thing that runs in conjunction with around the same time as the Scotfish Bowls and the things like that. So we can try and get, when everyone's getting all that amped up, ready for the season, they're all excited, and we can try and do this as a yearly thing. And we'd like to try and grow it. And so far, for everyone who has shown interest, completely blown away by it, and would like to try and keep that going for the future, so we can make this a yearly tradition for us all.
And like you said, at no point did I say, when I initially tweeted it out and in my tweets afterwards as well, at no point did I mention anything about prize money, prizes for the winners of any leagues. It was purely just based on raising money for charity. And to have that many people straight away say, I want to be involved in this, that just speaks volumes about not only Australians, because we know we step and we try and help when we can, but just the fantasy community in general. And this is people before this, I had no idea who they were, never interacted with them, nothing like that on Twitter. And they've jumped in and said, I want to be involved in this. This is an awesome idea. What do I need to do? And that's just what sparked it. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about where it can go, just based off what's happened in this first week so far. It's blown my mind where we sit at the moment. So I'm excited about it.
It is the True Blue NFL Charity Bowl. If you want to get involved, yes, as Brad was saying, speak to Dan. You can follow Dan on Twitter at beard_82. You can follow Brad Bolt on Twitter as well. You can at Brad Bolt 1, of course. And you can follow me on Twitter as well at John Lloyd Roberts. Guys, this is it, NFL Lab. Oh, and don't forget to follow the NFL Lab on Twitter as well, NFL Lab Network. Episode 1, done and dusted. Thank you for listening to the Saturday Air Raid. I'm so glad that it could be with two amazing friends that I've made through Twitter and the fantasy community here in Australia. I'm glad you've come along for the ride.
I just want to say to Brad as well, thank you for the opportunity to bring me into NFL Lab Network. I'm beyond words that I'm getting this opportunity now, and it's because of you and the friendship that we've sparked up. So thank you for that. Thank you for the opportunity.
That's it.
No worries, guys. No, but happy to have you guys both on board. First couple of people that I reached out to, we had a great chemistry, I thought, on the draft show, and that was enough for me to go, do you know what? I get along with you guys really well off of mic, so I reckon we could do something really fun here. So we carry that on, and we'll see how this goes for the year, and hopefully you guys come along, everyone listening, you come along with us and you enjoy the shows that are coming to you soon.
The 4.5 hour little test to see how it goes live show that we did for the NFL draft. That was excellent. We're going to have more shows coming to you soon. Thank you for listening to the Saturday Air Raid. It's been a pleasure. We'll catch you next week.